Welcome to Through the Door, an insider's perspective to running a business. I'm Megan Comfort, small business manager at Nevada State Bank, and I am extremely excited to introduce my next guest to you. His name is Carlos Gonzalez. He is a serial entrepreneur for a majority of his life. He owns several businesses located in Las Vegas and then also the western region of the United States, tied to the trades industries within construction. So I'm extremely excited to have him here today. He is a husband, father, grandfather, classic car lover, and one of the most humble and intelligent people that I've had the pleasure of working with. So thank you, Carlos, for being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about, you've been a business owner a majority of your career, but can you share some stories on how you got into the trades and then working as an employee when you made that decision that you wanted to be a business owner?
Yeah, been in the trade since I was 18 years old, since I graduated high school. Found my calling in manufacturing, and it took me about 10 years to realize that I plateaued at what I did and knew that one day I want to own my own business. So started going down that path to getting experience in different companies to how things are done.
So at your experience with other companies, what did you kind of gather there that really helped you when you decided to open up your own business?
I think a lot is scalability, from doing it in a small portion to a big portion. What are the right assets to purchase? Client base, how to bring a client base. So each step of that for the next 4 or 5 years in my career was just understanding that phase of it. And then finally, taking the plunge and opening my own business.
Tell us what that was like. Did you open that up by yourself or did you have partners?
No, I had partners. Like anything else, you need financial backing as well as, I knew my trade, my craft, but there's also the sales side of it. So learning, the first business was more learning how to have a partnership is really important. You can be good at one thing and not another, but understanding how important it is to know it all.
So tell me more about that. What did you learn with that first partnership, good and bad?
I would say what is going to be your end goals, that you share the same common goals for your business. If you do, it makes it a lot easier. If you have different goals, again, age has a lot to do with it. I was young. I want this to last forever. Somebody else might not share the same goals. So that was really important. But I'd say on my first business, the biggest lesson learned is when I had OSHA come through my facility. I thought I did a good job. I've done this for a long time, checked all the boxes. But when they came through, they really hammered me down on a lot of things. And it's probably my first most important lesson I learned because as we went through the process, there's nothing like you have to fix things right away, like right now. And you're doing that and you're understanding that nothing else is more important than keeping your business open and knowing that every day that the inspector's there, you might not be open tomorrow. And at the end, I remember telling him, hey, I didn't know I had to do all these things. And his comment to me was, ignorance is not the answer. And I will always remember that because from that point forward, I knew that what I knew was not enough. I needed to learn the finances. I needed to learn the sales. I needed to learn every part of my business in order to be successful.
Yeah, that would be a very sobering moment and terrifying as well because your business shutting down and not being able to open your doors and actually fulfill needs that your customers have can be a very difficult thing to rebound from. So tell me a little bit more about the discussion with your partnership. Was that something that you think you had those conversations at the very beginning to make sure that you laid down the, understanding of your goals and roles and responsibilities? Or was that something that you kind of moved into getting that information along the way and realizing that maybe you and your partners did not see eye to eye?
Verbally, yes, you talk about it. If I could go back in time, I would have set up a board of trustees right off the bat, made sure I had the right account, the right attorney that fit my business. Because there's a time where you're still a worker. Every day you're a worker. It's no different than anybody else. But then you put your owner hat on at the end of the day, and that's when you assess the real big problems. If I could have done that from the beginning, I think outcomes would be a lot different. But again, it was a lesson that made me stronger as I went along in my career.
Tell me how that business kind of dissolved and then the knowledge that you took from that into your next venture.
I sold that business years later to start a new venture. And again, some might think it's about money, but if you're an entrepreneur, it's not always about money. It's about completing tasks, goals. And I completed the goals. I'm not a big college educated. I've worked with my hands my whole life. So that was my college. And going into the next business, I was able to take that knowledge I learned, and you do it again. You get back on your feet and you do it again.
So one thing that you've always said to me that I think is really interesting is if you do a business plan, that can solve a lot of your problems. I think a lot of business owners sometimes today think that a business plan is solely for the purpose of getting financing or checking a box for an investor or something along those lines. Can you share a little bit more about what you mean by doing a business plan will actually solve a lot of your problems?
Yeah. Your business plan is probably the first and most important thing that you establish, because if you continue the path of your business plan, and throughout the years, you're going to be adapting to it. Okay, but it sets your end goal. What are you trying to do? It sets, are you going to bring managers on board to grow with you? Scalability. Okay, you do it right, you're able to punch in numbers and see what it's going to look like. Okay, and once you establish that, it makes it so much easier to understand, especially when you're buying equipment. What's your ROI? Okay, you look into it as another little business inside the business. How many years is it going to take to pay back? Because a lot of times within that, you're going to realize that just because you're making money doesn't mean you're making money. Your money's going in so many places that how you spend it becomes the most crucial thing.
How did you learn that piece of it? That's one thing that I find interesting because you really learned that from your experiences of owning companies and understanding the importance of managing your cash flow. But what made you really realize that that was important to you? Is there like a story or an experience that you can call upon that kind of resonated, I need to study my financials?
I think having financial backing spoils us, where we make decisions based on what we think is best, but losing everything and starting from scratch and having to buy every little thing with every penny that you make, having no banking, no nothing, where you go months without paying yourself. Your workers come first. You start looking at what you buy. How am I going to pay for it? And the return on investment now becomes crucial, because you could spend those profits on that piece of equipment, but you're not going to have money from it for 2 years, sometimes 5 years. So new is not always best, and sometimes new is best. You just got to decide, how that's going to work for you.
That's one thing that I've heard you say to me that I've actually utilized within my husband's businesses as well is growing in small increments is actually better and graduating up to the bigger sales. Can you elaborate more on why you believe that that's the best way?
For each business, I'm sure it's different. For me, I've had the big businesses. I've had the spoils of, you want it, you get it. But it comes to stress. If the sales ain't there, you got equipment on idle, and it actually worked against you. So you can't scale down, and that's the problem. If it's paid off, you can scale down, you have no payment. So it makes it easier. But for me, I look at it as if I'm going to go get a loan, I want to make sure that I already have the money to pay it cash before I get a loan. And it takes the stress off.
So that's an interesting concept, just, having the cash, but then wanting to get the financing. What do you typically look at there as a business owner when you're deciding, I want to borrow money or should I just pay cash for it?
What I teach my managers now, because we're an employee-owned company, is, live within your means. Just take simple concepts that you do at home and do it in your business. Okay, you don't go out to dinner if you don't have the money for it. The same concept, but we look at things differently when you allocate something, and I teach them to use quick ratios. So it's easy to understand and not stress over the big picture. If you want it, do we have the money? Can we pay for it cash? Yes or no? Now we take in consideration what's the interest rate, and teach them that, in your loan, you're going to pay off the interest first and then the principal. Well, what are you really paying for it overall? So if you want a quick return on investment, the financing can hurt you because now you paid a lot more for that. So if you have the cash, we might use the cash to pay it. It might not be the right thing, but it works for me.
Well, and it reduces the stress. We call it in banking the break-even point in a business. If you have a lot of debt or you have a lot of expenses that you have to cover, then your sales level gets even higher. So you're not able to fall below that sales level without starting to potentially default on debt or find a way to contribute more money into your business. And yeah, that can be very stressful for a company. So it's smart to look at it from the perspective of, do we really need this? Do we need all the bells and whistles? What would be our ROI? These are all things and concepts that I think are interesting to hear a business owner talk about that really doesn't have the financial backing, because you learned all of this on the job. What really switched gears for you when you started realizing my companies are growing to a point where I really have to start being more of the financial guru, if you will, than just the operator?
I think it's when you start growing and your break-even point starts growing with you, and you start realizing that you can't go back. You can't go back to being small. And there's a turning point where there's a lot of truth to that. It's almost impossible because your systems are not made for that. And that's when you start realizing that you're spending a lot of money where you made more money when you were small than when you're big, and trying to find a happy medium because your team will instantly follow your path. They will start doing the same things that you do, So again, a big part of it is educating them for the lessons that you learned in the past.
And that's something that you mentioned actually in one of your previous comments, was that you guys are now an employee-owned company. Before that transition happened to employee-owned, you had a partner that was pretty vital to your business. It was you and him, and that person, passed away suddenly. Can you tell us that experience, how difficult that was, and then the choices that you made to move it into a direction to where you came out stronger?
Yeah. Like anything else, we hit rock bottom in the recession. We lost everything. No business, never rented in my life. Here I am in my 40s trying to understand how to rent a house. Actually was stressful. Mm-hmm. If you've never rented and you don't know, buying a house, easy. Buying several houses, easy. But we started with nothing, and we had set a goal that if something happened to him or myself, we're throwing in the towel, cash it out, and it's retirement time. Because we knew going into it, we were going to work endless hours. Okay, our life was work. And tragically, it did happen. And everything that we said we would do and plan for now became reality. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with this? When you look at the workload taking on that much more stress, I've been thankful we had such a great team behind us that understood our passion and wanted to continue it. And that was the point that it said, okay, we're going to continue this. He gave me every opportunity financially to say, hey, I didn't spend a big portion of my life just to end this way. Mm-hmm. So he said, continue the businesses. So, and we did that, and it was right after COVID. So as it is,
Layer it on.
I give kudos to any small business that made it through COVID, because they would understand what it's like to go home and not know if you're going to have a business. So we got through COVID. This happens, and it was hard. It was really hard because you don't have nobody to bounce some of the big issues, with. So at that point, you got to depend on your team. So I looked around me and saw that a lot of our team was just as passionate as we were, and giving them a chance to blossom was the key thing. I set up my board, involved them in where the businesses were going, and was not greedy, and said, you know what, it was not mine to begin with. Let's see what this can do. And it was the best thing I could have done, because it took all this stress and everybody had a little piece of it. Okay. And my guidance with them made them even stronger. And after that, it was just a roller coaster. It was just going up, and we were covering so much ground so fast. And going back, I wish we would have done that earlier. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we had to teach every person what a P&L is, what a balance sheet is, how the banking works, even on their personal side. And it just taken years, but it's definitely, everybody's grown so much from it.
That's one thing that I really find fascinating about the transition of it moving into an employee-owned type of company, and you identifying the talent that was within your space around you and giving them responsibility, more responsibility than maybe they had, but they were invested in it. So it kept them interested in wanting to see the business move forward and see what you guys could do with it. One thing that you do that is very intriguing to me outside of the board is that you have regular strategic meetings with your teams. Can you share a little bit about some of the topics and things that you cover? That's one thing that I think has also contributed to how far you guys have come over the last few years.
Yeah, we look at our businesses. I guess you're going to spend a third of your life working. Okay, so we really emphasize on if you're going to spend a third of your life doing something, have the passion for it. If this isn't your thing, it's okay. If you just need to make some money and you're going to help us grow, it's okay. But love what you do. And we, to get to that point, we look at, are the guys vested that way? And it's really worked out that way. And we strategically have our meetings. We have them every month, every quarter. The quarter is a big one. We have our meeting, and then after that, we'll all go to dinner or do something. But we set goals that are achievable. So when we have our strategic meeting, everybody has their goals. Whether we're increasing productivity, whether it's we need to emphasize more on our clients' needs, so on and so forth. And we have from sales to production to accounting, all within that structure.
There's no waste in your company. I've noticed that going into your offices and seeing how even a supervisor, they're not supervising people, they're contributing and working towards whatever needs to be fulfilled for that day. How do you develop a culture around the fact that you want no waste? You want everyone understanding your role is so important because you're either bringing in the sales, and I need you to absolutely focus on that, or you are minimizing the expense, and I really need you to focus on that because that's what really helps us stay around, be able to continue growing and doing bigger things.
We focus on the bottom line, okay? Because sales is not always the answer to our problems. We have so much room for improvement. I mean, every day we think of other things. We have boards up to say, okay, what can we do better? And there's a time and a place, But if you're always trying to improve, and I explain to them, it's okay. Everything comes down to two things. It's either going to take money from your bottom line or add to your bottom line. So as they're making decisions, showing them that make your decision, just understand, are you going to add to it or are you going to take from it? And 9 times out of 10, if you start thinking that way, you're going to add to it. If you're going to take from it, it's only because you want to add more to it in the future.
Mm-hmm. I love that you bring that up. I think that's such a simple concept, but it's probably makes light bulbs go off for a lot of the people that work with you. To have them justify every decision that they're doing, how is that helping me increase sales, or is it taking it away? But is it taking it away for a small period of time to continue to add to it? That's really cool. Tell me about some mentors that you might have had in your life as being a business owner. When you come across challenges and issues, are there other people that you have that you reach out to for advisement?
I reach out. My clients and my vendors are probably the two biggest resources that I have used to help me. Okay, you would be surprised how much they're willing to help both entities because you're in the middle. Okay, your client needs your services. So the better you are at your services, the better pricing he might get, the better service he might get, the quicker responses we have. So feeling comfortable with, key people that can help you, naturally they want to help you. That's why they're doing business with you. You can learn so much from them. And within learning from them, you could see what their needs are of yours, where you can, plan and grow with their needs. Same thing with your vendors. They want you to be financially strong and pay your bills. So they're going to help you a lot more than you give them credit for, because again, being a small business, if you reach out to them to see, how can I increase my cash flow, and if you're willing to take the time to sit down with them, they want you to get more sales. So they will help you quite a bit. And I'd say those were two big resources that I utilized throughout my career.
What about growth? You talk about if you listen to your customers, it can actually help you grow. And I've heard you say this in the past, where bridging the gap between when your customer receives your product and figuring out how to help them before it gets to you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, scalability. I mean, you might not be the biggest company out there. If your client has a lot of volume, they have a big need for your services. Sometimes it's better that you can offer 20% of that need, but you do it right. Okay, because they're going to need that for you, whether they're really busy or they're slow, but do that really good, because you do fall into the third tier subs sometimes. You do fall where they need you when they're slow, and they need you when you're busy. So finding your place in the food chain, to me, it has been really important.
Let's talk a little bit about diversification and your thought process around having diversified customers and vendors.
Yeah. In the past, you want the big whales. You want the big chops, to say, I did that. Okay. And I get it. Anybody who's an entrepreneur, they need that feather in their cap to say, you accomplished that. Okay. Kudos, do it. Okay. And once you're done with that, you get it off your chest and you're done. But you need to be diverse, and not all your work is in one place. Okay. Because again, a project can finish, a job can finish, and then you're chasing your tail trying to get other work. So understanding on your accounts receivable, it's diverse enough to ride out a storm. Because again, other people get in trouble just as well, or money's not coming in fast enough. Okay, so you need to be diverse enough to ride out those storms.
How do you do that in your business? How do you how do you think about diversification?
Again, I like to use ratios, percentages, things that it's easy for my team to understand, to know when times are tough. We can be on a big project, and our accounts receivable might be 50% of it in one project. Okay, and that's when my team already knows, like, hey, even if you're making money, you're not making money. It's the numbers are too big. Trying to keep where no account is bigger than 15% is a good rule of thumb, in small businesses. So you can ride out the storms. So even though you're busy, you have to get even more busy, because you got to get those ratios down. And again, that's in our world, that's how we look at growth. And then when you slow down, it's the same concept. You got to diversify when you slow down as well.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about maybe some indicators or things that you look at in your business and your industry when you think things are starting to slow down. I think every business owner wants a crystal ball, right? They try to figure out, when should I prepare for a potential slow period, and then how do you prepare?
I think indications where projects are being postponed is really important. It's just communicating with your clients, because they will give you that information if you ask. And before you know it, they're slowing down, or one might slow down, one might get busy.
There was a time where you told me that a financial backing can actually hurt you, and that clients and sales does not always equate to a successful business. What did you mean by that?
Well, okay. You take on so much debt on your startup capital, that again, each business is different. I don't know. All I know is mine. But I've had that where, you can buy all the things that you need right off the bat. Okay, it doesn't mean you're going to use them all. Things are going to be on idle. Okay, and it's going to cost you money. Okay, you're not going to make the profits that you need to make. Okay, so looking back in time, I wish I had less. It sounds weird, but I would have taken that, put it away, and not used it, and grew into it instead of right off the bat, we need all these things to start a business. Because in reality, I've proven that I did not need it. But I had to learn my lesson the hard way. So that would be my advice to other small businesses, to thinking you need to go get all this because others haven't. Follow your own path. Live within your means, build your business within your means, okay, and know that there's a time and a place that you're going to need that.
That's another story that I want you to actually share a little bit more about, is your upbringing within your family and how they've kind of instilled a hard work ethic in you, but also the support that you've had with your family working in the business that you're in, knowing that you have these long days, you're the first person in, you're the last person out. Can you share some stories or insight into that foundation and how that really helped you with your company and the success that you've had?
Yeah, at the beginning, you ask for advice. Like, again, you're going into something you do not know. You could read it. You can, read a book. You can go online. Until you do it, that's when you're really going to learn it. And people saying, don't mix family with business. And I get it, to each his own. For me, all I've known is one way, and I wouldn't have it no other way. My family has been part of the business since they were kids. Because to me, I believe that if times are good, who reaps the benefits? Your family. You go on vacation, you do things. Kids want to play competitive soccer. You can afford the better things in life. If times are tough, who hurts from it? Your family. So in my world, separating the two is not a good thing, because I work with my kids. I work with my wife. I get to see them every day. So to me, that's awesome. It can be stressful, because again, you got to if you're the boss, you're the boss. You got to make hard decisions. But I think it's a good thing. At least they know when you're working late, why you're working late. Just don't take it for granted. You do need to be at home.
Mm-hmm. Well, and entrepreneurs have such a unique position because they have more flexibility. I can't bring my kids to work to see what mom does. They can't come with me and experience it firsthand, nor do I think they'd really want to do that. But it's cool to hear business owners involving their family and having their kids see really what they do all day, and being exposed to it at a young age, I think also fosters entrepreneurialism in them too. That's usually what you see.
Yeah.
So tell me about your employees and how you've built your team. Some of the things that you've tried to instill within your team, and then also the culture that you've created around your business, especially with it being employee owned.
I think one is you got to be really humble, because your janitor, one day is your janitor, 4 years later, he might be your client. And we've had that, but you treat them fair, okay? What they do is just as important as your lead estimator, your shop foreman, so on and so forth, because without their services, it would be a mess. So making sure that everybody respects each position has been really important, and not being afraid to do those positions. If you have to go back and do the things that, you don't want to do it, but it has to be done in order to run correctly. That's been really important. And again, we take the concept of a third of your life is going to be this. Mm-hmm. So we try not to have drama. We try to understand that, sometimes going the first day of school, it's okay. It's not going to make us or break us. Just let us know, that they can have those memorable moments and not say, well, I can't go because of my job. If you do it right, you should be able to take time off. You should be able to do certain things. But understanding that everybody's important.
I think that that's something that I've noticed within your team when I walk into your office, that everybody has their own roles and is working, but I've never seen anybody not enjoy what they're doing. They all seem to really love what they do, and you've been able to find people that are passionate about the same thing. Finding like-minded individuals is sometimes difficult. And one thing that I think is unique about your business structure and something that you just do personally is that you try to educate employees on personal finances. You try to help them set goals that you know are important for them personally, not anything to do with a company, just something that you think would really help set them up later on in life. What makes you look at doing things like that for your employees?
Well, if you educate them financially to make right decisions, okay, they're the same ones that are going to want to make more money, and it's never enough, okay? But if you educate them from the beginning, okay, and they're able to invest their money properly, buy a house or, again, whatever might be their situation, they don't need to make more money because you still end up with zero, still zero, So I think helping people understand how finances work, it only pays off. It pays off because later on, those people are, and again, you would be surprised in our trade how many people are our clients that worked for us at one point, and there's some that you look, they're very talented, and you see from the beginning go, I'm not going to be able to afford this person. This guy has the knack. He's going to be a supervisor. He's going to own his own business as well. Mm-hmm. And you look at those and you want to guide them in the right direction because you're planting seeds that are going to pay off years and years later. To say, you treated me right, you taught me this, you were fair, you the way you asked us to work, you didn't ask us to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself. And it pays off.
So last question on leadership. What are some of the takeaways or things that you've learned over the years leading a bigger group of people towards a common goal?
I would say standardization. You have to set some goals, set a path, and you stick to it. You'll make changes along the way, but making things the same, or else one manager is different than the other manager, and so on and so forth. And before you know it, it gets out of control. So say, okay, guys, this is how we're going to do this. Do we agree? And again, I've had my managers fill out their own evaluations and say, you're the professional. You tell me what you're responsible for, because that puts a lot of accountability on that. And again, it's, are you worth that money? Everybody knows their net worth. It's the first thing I always ask. What are you worth? Mm-hmm. Because you might think you're worth a lot more, and you have all these tasks and duties and things that you know how to do, but in our business, I only need 20% of those. So I know you know more than what we're going to need, and that's awesome. It lets us grow, but I can't afford you.
That's unique. That's That's a unique way to do it, actually. Having them, it makes the conversations easier, actually, with that particular employee, right? If they're putting pen to paper and writing down what they think they can contribute to the business and what that's worth. What about difficult conversations? There's often times as a business owner where you have to have difficult conversations with your team about things that might have gone wrong or things that might be getting out of control. How do you approach that as a leader?
That's tough because you're always trying to protect the bottom line. And to have them learn a lesson the hard way and it's going to cost you money is really hard. You want to intervene. You can give suggestions. And there's some times where none of those are an option. And you have to understand that at that point you're like, okay, I let you guys do it your way, so on and so forth, but I'm putting the hammer down. You're going to do it this way because this, and this. And even if I'm wrong, my job is to protect the bottom line, okay? And that the client is being taken care of. So if those two things are being, sacrificed or questioned, and it sucks. It really does. But again, if you have the right team, they will understand that you had to be hard on those decisions. And afterwards, they can go back and say, wow, okay, I get it. Small lessons, you let them learn and say, if you would have did this. And it's tough because you say, I could have prevented that. But sometimes they need to learn it because it's easy to say, okay, just tell me what to do. And it's like, no, I want you to think through the process, okay? Because that is how you're going to learn. Mm-hmm. You just try to keep them to a minimum.
Yeah. Well, that's how they blossom, right? You mentioned how much your team has blossomed when you gave them more responsibility. And so not just doing it for them, but making them think through things is going to help them problem solve more and faster in the future.
Yeah, and I think you would be surprised on people who are passionate in what they do, the results if you actually gave them a chance. It doesn't work out for everybody, but if you got 1 in every 5, that's good odds, and they're going to be with you forever, or you expect them to be, and it makes it so much easier to run a business when your managers are like that.
Well, thank you, Carlos, so much for being here with us today. And that concludes our episode of Through the Door, an insider's perspective to running a business. Thank you so much for listening today.